morning, everyone. We will take a minute here to pray, ask the Lord to help us in this lesson here today. Many of us here today have already know these lessons, which is a refresher course, and hopefully we can pull out something new, right? So let's all stand together real quick and raise our hands and ask the Lord to help us. Jesus, we cry out to you. We need your help today. Give us the understanding we need. Anoint our mind and our hearts and our ears to receive what you have for us today, to be able to make it a step further down the road of maturity in this Christian faith. We pray that you would help us to reach the people around us and help those that are brokenhearted, broken minds, Lord, broken lives, to be able to put back together and find that you are the way to this peace, we pray in Jesus' name. Everybody said amen. And you may be seated. That's the first of several probably for today, right? If you have your books, please turn to 2.3, it says here, which is this series, as we have been learning, is God is with us. And it's been basically, I think the whole month has been about Joseph's life. Brother Dan, he asked if I would teach his lesson beginning of the month because he was sick, and so you get to learn about the beginning of Joseph, and this is kind of near the end of Joseph's life, which is, it's kind of neat how they can break that down into 4 different lessons. So God knows the way. Today's big idea is I will remain faithful to God and trust him to order my steps. Easier said than done, right? When we get in the middle of these trials and these battles and these hardships, it's easy to kind of get lost in the fact that I'm supposed to do something here, and I'm supposed to trust the Lord, especially when I can't find him or see him or hear from him, right? So I'm going to read the scripture here from Genesis chapter 41, verses 38 through 40, to kind of give you the sense of where we're at. Genesis chapter 41, starting at verse 38, said, "And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath shewed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou." So we're going to find out today that God orders our steps if we live righteously before him. So I wanted to start out with a little bit of an object lesson. I got home on Friday, and I don't want to pick on him too much, but Camden had ditched me, and I had gotten behind all the rest of you guys as far as the carpool, so I didn't get to make it to men's conference. But I did take it to start learning, really focusing on this lesson, and I tried making something. And you'll see here shortly, because you know how it goes in the morning, I walked out without it. And so I made Julie go get it. So hopefully she'll be here shortly, and we'll go just to kind of have you hang on here to something. So let's start with the lesson connection, because this is something that kind of helps us to connect, and it helps. Well, you know what? Has anybody been in a situation at work, and you're doing your hardest to do your job? You want to focus on it the right way. You want to make sure it's complete and satisfactory to the bosses. Yeah. And then you got some punk that comes along, if I can use some real words here. A punk comes along, cutting corners, with a bigger smile and a more brash attitude, and takes off early and cuts corners, like I said there, in his work and his everything, and you're left kind of holding the bag, right? I'm sure it's helping to all of us. So here we are. I just thought of it when I seen your face, Brian. I don't know if that happens in your job so much, right? But whipping papers, I used to do that as a teenager, and if we had to have a substitute, they usually cut corners. They're usually hitting the screen door with that giant, Sunday paper, and waking up the neighbors at 4 a.m., and you're getting the complaints later, right? I'm just trying to think of some things that's happened over the years. Or like yesterday, I went all the way to Burton to drop off my lawn tractor because they service them, the Husqvarna's there. And then I get there, and there's a couple of older guys that work in there, and one's Jeff, and the other one's Jeff. They're both Jeff. And they said, you could drop this off at the Corona and we'll come get it. I says, and why didn't they tell me that last year? I drove all the way over here with a trailer that's as wide as the lane, Brother Dan, and through construction in the middle of Flint. Now I know what it feels like to be him. Everybody's squeezing me. I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute. I got a wall on one side, and you're getting ready to take out the tire on this trailer on the other. So he had to go through all that to get over there just to find out I only had to go a few miles. And then they told me something else. I'm like, you know what? I hate to say this, but these younger guys, they aren't doing their job. Well, you guys are telling me all the good information. And so, it's just kind of a laughter thing, as you've probably been in those situations before. And so here we are, and that's what I'm going to skip through it, but when we get in those particular areas, and you have the punk skipping out, and you're left with the bag, you've got a defining moment, as this lesson says, that will appear out of nowhere. So, this is the very essence of our character, and it can be altered forever depending on how we handle this. Are we going to take this opportunity to make the punk look bad? Are we going to try to be a bigger person and just, it's not who's right, it's what's right? Again, another thing that's easier said than done when you're in the middle of it. Here's your opportunity to show the bosses, because you got something going on, and he skipped out early on Friday, and now on Monday you got this presentation, and you can show that he has been failing his job. Are you going to take advantage of the situation, which is a defining moment of your character, or are you going to have a life of faithfulness that is critical to successfully meeting our own defining moments? And so here we are, and that's what Joseph is found in this lesson here this morning. So I'm going to kind of go through the different points. I'm not going to read through them all, but I want to do it for the sake of any new people, so that we all don't just take advantage of or take for granted the story of Joseph. We're at the point now, especially if you've been sitting out here on every Sunday morning, you kind of probably heard the different steps he's kind of went through. We're at the end here. This guy has been not rotting. He's pretty active. He's been in the jail with all the other, hoodlums. And this, like I said in the first lesson, it's got to smell pretty raunchy in there. It ain't like the prisons in America today, where they have the shower and 3 meals a day and cable TV and workout centers and even education centers now. This is like a dungeon that you're thrown into. Smells, like I said before, like a guy's locker room probably. And it's not a pretty place. They don't let you shave and take care of yourself. And there's proof of that because of what they did with Joseph. So he's sitting in here, and it's already been some years now that the butler and the baker who had been thrown in prison had been let out, one to get his head chopped off, the other one to be put back in his position of authority next to the Pharaoh, which, again, who would want that job? You've got to taste to make sure there's no poison in it before he drinks it. I mean, again, it's one of those, it's like being a tester of dynamite. It's pretty, one day you're going to get one that doesn't work right, and you won't be able to live to tell everybody about it. So he's sitting here, and he's like, oh, yeah, you've had these dreams, and nobody can tell you. I remember now. Good gracious, it's been 3 years. I forgot about poor Joe sitting in the dungeon cell. He told me to say something to you, but I'm sure that he can interpret your dreams. So the dream, it says here, the dream had reimagined it reimagined Joseph's dream. We forget about that point. He's sitting there, he's hanging on to something. Has God told you something throughout the years that you've been waiting to see come to pass? I know when I was here on Tuesday night for the prayer thing, I was like, God, let these things start happening that people have seen and heard and spoken of you here. That you have given them a promise for Owasso. We're not just hanging in here because, it's a tropical paradise, right? We're hanging on. It's something that God has given us all these years. So here he is. He's getting taken out of prison. It doesn't say this here in our lesson, but they told him, hey, man, here's a new pair of clothes. They don't stink, of BO and everything else. Put them on after showering and after shaving. You got to look good. You're going in front of Pharaoh, basically the president of Egypt, right? And so that they say that actually in the scriptures. That tells me they didn't allow them to take care of themselves with hygiene. So here Pharaoh is. In the beginning of Genesis 41, it's got a report of 2 different dreams. First we saw the 7 well-fed cattle, big old fat, plump T-bones sitting out there. They came up out of the Nile River. That was very interesting. I didn't realize for all these years of hearing this story, but the cows came up out of the Nile River. There's significance to that, and I'll point it out here in a minute. And they feed along its riverbanks, which generally you don't see a cow right next to the river eating. You know, they don't care. I've seen cows sticking their necks through an electric fence to grab some stuff on the other side of it. You know, they're very curious animals. If you remember, Pastor had cows for a little bit, and they got through the fence and were walking down the road or something like that. Bad situation if it's midnight and you're coming up over the hill and there's a couple 1,000-pound cow sitting there, right? So they're very curious. They want to go, but they're usually not along the riverbanks eating much. These were followed by 7 more cattle, clearly starving. They come up out of the river again, and they consume the well-fed cattle. I don't know about you, but that would be a really weird dream. If you wake up in the middle of the night, he was probably sweating to death, like, what was that? These cows are eating the fat cows. They're that hungry. They come up eating the other cows. So, look at that, special delivery. Thanks, babe. So, if my 2 children would kindly pass out one of those to everybody here today. And someone is a visitor. Someone's coming up the back door if someone wants to greet them. Sorry. Anyway, so they come up. So he wakes up. He's got no interpretation of it. Generally speaking, his religious gurus or sorcerers could tell him some type of sign. They were astrologers, these Egyptians. They looked up at the sun, the moon, the stars, and they correlated everything with, okay, well, that 3 stars, and we had a good year, so that's got to be, whatever, right? That's what they were doing. This is for you to keep, by the way. I just wanted you to hang on to something. Like we had said a few years back when we were teaching, and Crystal was in here then with me, but when we were teaching, Mom, whoever else might have been in there, I'm looking around, the kids on Wednesday nights, the object lesson is what always got a hold of them, because you got to, you know what I'm saying, you got to have something there. So just kind of look at your little block there, and as we go along, I'll kind of make this connect to the rest of us. So here they are. Nobody's able to help. So he goes back to sleep thinking, good gracious, that was a wild dream. Shouldn't have ate pizza last night. This time he saw a stalk of corn with 7 full ears of corn on it. That sweet corn that we all love so much in the summertime, getting ready to start just mowing around it as we twist it with butter dripping off our chin and flowers that are coming in the back door. Could someone get that, Brian, for Brother Dan? I guess that person was a delivery person. So here we are. And then all of a sudden, 7 withered ears of corn. Now, have you ever gotten so excited to buy corn for the family? It's still in the husk, and you take it home, and the family does what the family does, and 2 weeks later, you open it up, and it's all withered. We never ate it. Yeah, you want to stick it in the boiling pot of water then? You want to butter it up then? So those, again, they took over the 7 full ears of corn. So here we are. He's like, what is going on? He woke up again, yelling for people. They're come running. Man, I just had this wacko dream again. What is going on here? But these dreams were symbolic and deeply disturbing to Pharaoh. Have you ever had a dream that is deeply disturbing to you? Right? I woke up last night with one, not real long and drawn out, but still, it was bothering to me. So I couldn't help to sit there and just in my mind kind of pray for that. It was a person, actually, that came to my mind. And it's like, you can't take these things lightly. If God wakes you up with something, even if it's just a little sliver, he's laying somebody on your heart. Give him a few minutes. Give them a few minutes, because you might save them from an eternity of damnation. So here we are. The Pharaoh was believed to be a demigod. That's how they looked at him. That's why they built these sarcophagus with these, elaborate caskets, and they stuffed them full of things in their casket to help them as soon as they woke up in the afterlife that they would have. Matter of fact, a lot of times their poor wives were buried alive with them, and their servants buried alive. Now, if you were lucky enough to be in one of those pyramids, you probably got to wander around and just starve to death, right? In the dark. Can you imagine? I mean, this is how crazy this religion was at the time. Once you sit down and think of it, we see the glorious looking King Tut's, casket, but he was a teenager when he died. I mean, they make a big deal about this kid, but he had something wrong. And they all had something wrong. Burying them, the cats or whatever it is, to kind of ward off the bad spirits. I mean, they just had a lot of weird stuff when you sit and think about it. But they believed that he was the actual embodiment of the will of the gods, little g, and their purpose on earth. That's what they believed. That's why they come running in the middle of the night when he's shouting for them, needing help. The fact that Pharaoh was troubled by these dreams and unable to interpret their meaning showed that his power as a little god was severely limited. And we know that to be true anyway. So, have you ever had a dream that upsets you? I have a few different times in my life. They're not fun. And how'd that impact us the next day? Do we quickly forget about it and move on, or do we try to do something about it? So here we are, part B, if you have your book. This is where the butler remembers Joseph. He's still down there in prison. Joseph is. I'll kind of skip through because I already read this. But the scripture says in chapter 40, verse 14 of Genesis, it says, "But think on me when it shall be well with thee," this is Joseph, "and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house," this dungeon, this prison. So he probably should have chose his words a little differently. Because he says, "Think of me when it shall be well with you." Could you think of me tomorrow? Not 3 years from now? Right? Please? But as soon as the butler was fed, he promptly forgot. And that's how a lot of people are. God, I promise you that if you get me out of this situation, I will. ... Right? Oh, shoot, that was several years ago. Oh, well, I guess God forgot. Let's move on. Right? No. So Joseph expected Pharaoh's butler to be at least sympathetic to the plight to another one of the imprisoners who was unjustly imprisoned for an erroneous charge. How many prisoners say that? Oh, I was put in here, they framed me, right? But Joseph was framed. And we'll see as we get through the rest of this lesson. I didn't think of it like this, but when he was put in a second place, prime minister of Egypt, he could have easily taken that out on Pharaoh or Potiphar's wife. Because now he can say you could do whatever you want. Did you ever think of that when you got in the position of authority? It's like it didn't even cross his mind. But a lot of us would hang on to that for 20 years and then say, ooh, here's my chance. Again, a defining moment, right? Simply forgotten is how he felt. And it had been cut to the deepest part of him. You're just languishing. You've been put in here intentionally, but it's not anything of your own doing. Matter of fact, it's what they say, good intentions, right? They just go, you just get in trouble no matter what you decide sometimes. And you did the right thing and got thrown in prison for it. But Pharaoh recognized that his fate hung in Joseph's ability to properly interpret the dreams. That moment would determine the kind of leader Joseph would be. Here he's got the king's attention. He's obviously sweating bullets. He doesn't know what's going on. It's frightening him. He can't focus. He knows because of who they look up to him to be and what he's expected to be. He even believes himself that he's supposed to be one of the gods of the heavens. So he's like, what's going on here? I can't do this. Would you help me out here? So here he goes. He uses his skills. Joseph does. But he didn't use them in a bad way. He could have sat there and said, you know what? If I figure this out, then can you do this for me? Will you get me out of prison? Or, like I said, I'm going to take it out on Potiphar and his wife. Oh, no. He could have had many just grievances, it says in this lesson. Many of them. He could have negotiated for his skill and his service, I guess you say. But here is the critical moment. And we'll have these. See, we're on the other side of this some several thousand years later, right? And we're just reading this story along like, wow, that's cool, Joseph. But have you ever been in a spot where you were on the bottom and you didn't know how you were going to get up? And you didn't know how the Lord was going to take you through? You just, like God does a lot of times, he goes, just wait. Wait, what? No. I need an answer. No, just wait. Right? How many of yours has an arrow on the block? Does anybody have something other than an arrow on the block? No? Jim? Which? Target. So, I'm glad you got that. So, what I wanted to use this for, and it's not part of the lesson, but we're always looking ahead for our target in eternity. All of our arrows, go ahead and hold your block up, please. Now, point it towards where that target is. We're all trying to make it that way, right? We're all in different spots of the room. You could say that we're all in different parts of our lives. We're all on different paths. But that is our target. Here we are as a family of God. Camden, would you mind grabbing 3 more of those and taking them back there to back row and passing them out? Even the kids can have them. It's not going to hurt them. I made sure to sand these off the edges, guys, the other night. So, we all have the ability to make it to heaven. We've all been asked. We've all been called by God. We wouldn't be here today. And there's many more that should be here today. There'll be many more that are here in 30 minutes. But the teaching stuff that I take seriously in here, and us teachers we do, we are trying to help us all mature in our Christian walk on the path that you're on, your little block there. For one, the block has 5 other sides that are blank. We can make excuses to not point that in the right direction, not point our lives in the right direction. Or we can fill it with emptiness of things that don't matter of this world. As Solomon called it, all is vanity. It's just, what's it going to do? What's extra money really going to do? What's extra time going to do if you don't spend it for the Lord? What is music or entertainment or games, whatever? I mean, I could come up with a list of different things. You could add to the list. And that's like your rest of your block. It's just all faded away. It's nothing. Ask my wife and kids how many times in the last couple years I'm like, this is all going to burn and melt away. This doesn't matter. This all doesn't matter. I'm not talking about this building. I'm talking about outside of here. The Lord is going to start over. Would you like to be on that side of, behind God watching it happen? Or would you like to be out there having it happen? Do you want to be on the inside of the inside circle of the Lord here, his peeps? Or do you want to be out there, his enemies? For one, he's going to wipe out all their names. They're not known in hell. He's going to start over. That's hard to fathom. I wish I would have thought of it sooner. I would have had them paint up here the periodic table of elements. Okay? You know what those are? Anybody remember science? Yeah? You have on there gold. It's Au. You have oxygen. You have all these things. Hydrogen. And Brian, I think he's listing off a couple. What are they? What do you think? What else on there? Yeah? There's helium. There's sodium. There's just a lot of things. We can name them all off, right? So if we seen them up here, if I would have had it, I would have put it up there. Sorry. But did you hear what the Lord said he's going to do? All the elements are going to melt away. The very elements that the whole universe, he's going to have melted away. He's starting over with a whole new chart of elements that we don't even know about. When that hit me one day, like I've been teaching the class, you can read things, and in, like Jameson, we and him were talking about Proverbs, because there's 31 of them, so you can read a chapter a day, every day of the month. Today we would be on chapter 24, And then next month we would hit, by May 24th, we would hit the chapter again, and we would see something different. Well, that's what happened to me when I was like, wait a second. All the elements are going to melt away? The very existence of every piece of matter that these scientists, trust the science, believe in, what they actually believe in is going to be melted away. They have no stance in front of the Lord. So when you look at your little block, set it somewhere, on your desk, on your dashboard, somewhere. You know, you don't have to look at it every day, but when it reminds you of something, is this really that important? Do I need to stick to the way? Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So here we are. Got a little ahead of myself, sorry. But it says here in verse 16 of chapter 41, it says, this is where Joseph here, he humbly acknowledged this. He says, the gift of dream interpretation is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And instead of using that moment to become the focal point of royal attention, I don't think we fathom the fact that he had the president's attention. Or at the time, Egypt was like the world power. It was the lead. So whatever you want to consider the world power right now, you've got that person's attention. You're in front of them. And doesn't the Bible even say you'll be taken in front of kings and in front of courts and all this other stuff? You know, so you will have this opportunity as well. Instead of using that as his focal point, Joseph, look at your block, pointed away from himself and to God of his ancestors, the source of his remarkable ability. And instead of choosing the path, your arrows again, of self-aggrandizement, and I had to look that up, which says to enhance the power or influence, the wealth, your position, your reputation. Instead of doing that, Joseph crucially chose the path of humility and service. Humility and service is going to make you feel better anyway at the end of the day. To sit there and, yeah, you're going to feel like a little excited because you got to go to the White House, and have the president's attention for a few seconds. You're going to be like, woohoo! But you would feel a lot better if you're helping someone out in maybe the final days of their life, or someone in need who truly is in need, that needs something, food or shelter or whatever, counseling. You're going to feel better as a person at night with that humility and that service. So here we are. And I have something off the side here. I don't know why this even hit me, but I was really thinking about the fact of what our society is really focusing right now. And someone had said this, I don't remember who it was, but they said basically anything with the word social in front of it is not good for us as children of God. Social security. That's relying on government. Social media. The word social is based, I have it written down here, whoops, I can't turn it, is based on rank or status. Think of that with social media. Ooh, I got all these followers, I got all these friends. My social rank and status has gone up. Every time someone sends me something, and no downside to anybody here, but I always think to myself, I don't need any more friends. I just think, I love all of you, but Facebook is not where I need to be your friend. I need to be a friend in front of you, right? And when you need it, by text or call or whatever. And that's a society, in a particular society, it's based on their rank or status, right? And then media, and I could have kept breaking this word down and for you guys today, but it says it's a channel of cultivation. Cultivating what? Or conveying what? A way of thinking or acting. A way, not the way. It's just pure evil at its essence. Just in general. And we know the media stinks right now. But we're talking all media. All media. Literature, movies, internet, all of it is channeling us away from the source. It's trying to get us to think like this or think like that or believe this way or believe that way. You know? Right? Isn't it? Now, for us that are on the older side of things, you're like, whatever, I'm not part of social media anyway. The TV does the same thing. I mean, you could sit there and be biting your nails down to nothing because of the fact what the news is telling you was going on in the world. Or you think you could probably see through all that, but yet you hear this negativity constantly, and it's gonna shape how you think of things or people when God's trying to shape us in another way. So we got to get back to the source. Instead of choosing the path of self-aggrandizement, he chose this critical path, and I said this of humility. So, why do you think it was important for Joseph to show humility in that moment? A lot of times, you aren't going to have anybody that's in that little meeting right then who's going to come out and be like, you know what, Sister Diane? I was proud of Joe. You should have seen what he said to the president to get him back on track. You're going to have somebody do that a lot of times. It's usually just you. It's just you a lot of times. And so you got to be humble about it. You got to go through it, and nobody will probably even notice. Not outside in your circle, right? How many of the prisoners people ran back and said, hey, by the way, you hear about Joseph? He's now, prime minister of Egypt. Yes, they found out over time, but he didn't have anybody in that court that was running back and telling all his buddies, his cellmates. So, the dreams concern the next 14 years of harvest. Now, it's been said that we should all really focus on this particular part because of what's coming at us right now in our world. We all know this is heading in the very wrong direction. You hear about the supply chain issues right now. That's what this was of ancient Egypt. So he said the next 14 years of harvest, good and bad, there was going to be bumper crops. And if you remember bumper crops, it was because God didn't want his people working in the 7th year. But they got to survive. They can't just go to Walmart and Meijer to get food. They had to do it. So if we don't plant something right now, we're not going to have nothing later to eat, right? Well, God would give them a bumper crop in that 6th year. Double it, triple it up. I had grown those grape tomatoes last year, by the way, Brother Ernie. Anybody grown those before? Okay, I also had green beans, and I also had green bell peppers. Yep, I didn't get any green beans, and I didn't get any green bell peppers because those cherry tomatoes took over everything. That was like my bumper crop, and I was giving out tomatoes to the whole family. I had so many of them things. But it was 3 years of harvest. That's a lot if you think about it. Because they had to get them through that year, the year that they were not supposed to work at all, and then the first year it would start over again. They had to make it through to harvest. So he gave them 3 years worth of food in that 6th year. So here we are. They're having a bumper crop in Egypt for 7 years in a row. And so then followed by the 7 years of famine, which it literally consumed the memory of the good years. That hit me. It's hitting me again right now. You're going to have good times, and God's going to have blessed you. He's going to have been like Joseph and moved you up the ladder, all these different things in your life, and then you're going to have life happen. But is it going to consume the memory of what God did for you in the good years? Are you going to sit there and say, poor me, God's forgotten about me, this is rough, I can't do this anymore? Are you kidding me? Should he wait? Should he give you the 7 bad years first? Right? You're supposed to praise him in the good times and the bad times. So, rough times, tough times, they have a way of consuming every memory of a good time. Even in your own personal life, it don't have to be a year long. But man, you can have one little thing happen to you, and it would just, you won't even, you're so clouded in your own judgment, you cannot focus on the good stuff from that person or from whatever, you know. Really? Am I the only one? No? That's what happens to us. So here it is. The significance of the challenge was presented here at the core of the Egyptian religious convictions. These years of plenty and famine were both pictured as issuing forth from the Nile River. Now, I said that in the beginning. Why was that important? The ancient Egyptians worshipped the Nile River. They relied on its apparent eternal cycle of flooding and receding to sustain their lives. The Nile River would if it would ever fail to do so, especially after providing such an abundant crop before, would have been nearly unthinkable to Pharaoh and his courtiers, it says courtiers. And that the God of the Hebrews was the one who revealed this coming failure to Pharaoh was an irrefutable evidence of his superior power to the so-called gods of the nations. So it was quite interesting. Now you can see why he had such a rough time blaming the pizza the night before for his bad dream. Because it came out of the beloved river, right? That was their flow of life. That was the river of life to them. And here we are. Oh my gosh, these cows came up out of the river. These guys worship the cows too, right? I mean, everything that they worship was coming up. That's why later on, 400, 500 years later, when Moses is taking out, well, the Lord is taking this stuff out on the river first, that was smacking the first biggest thing to them. It's like, whoa, are you kidding me? It's blood? You just killed my God? Right? I mean, think about it from their point of view. So here we are. God will speak to me if I will listen. If I will listen. Joseph had learned the crucial lesson of patience with the reliance upon God. Joseph did not panic. Joseph strengthened his faith in God and his commitment to live faithfully before him. That is a whole nother lesson. We're not good at this, people. I'm sorry. We have something come along, we panic. Right? We panic. And we sit there and we don't get strengthened in the middle of our faith because we're panicking. I think we've known this, but I'll reiterate. The panic comes from the root word pan, which was the little god of fear. Isn't it funny? We get panic out of that. We're giving over our stability to Satan, basically, because he's the god of this world, when we allow panic to take over. When we allow this unbelief to set in, that God can't do it. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. So, Joseph had learned that God would speak in his own way and in his own time, to be sure, but always exactly when his voice was needed. You've known that. God starts speaking right when you needed it. I mean, you thought you needed it, 6 months ago or whatever it may be. Sister Wendy, God showed himself to be true to you. There's been other people that I've heard of since this mass on your spine that had something very similar, and they're dying. God stepped in just when Sister Wendy needed it. That was for her health, but it was for her family's, obviously, mental, emotional stability, and it was for the rest of us to see that God still works in his people. Sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you. I hope I didn't. I want to always connect this with current stuff going on, right? So we know that God is still working in the midst of us. So he stood with confidence, Joseph did, in front of Pharaoh, knowing that the same God who had given him the interpretation of the butler and the baker's dream would not fail to give him this interpretation. Joseph had complete confidence in the principle that was later articulated by James. James chapter 1, verses 5 through 6. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not. That means, the upbraideth not means he does not chide you, he does not taunt you for asking him. And it shall be given him, but let him ask in faith, not wavering. Okay, so you can't go out of these doors and like, whoa, Brother Tony just said I can ask the Lord. You know, I'm going to pick on Camden. He likes Lamborghinis. Go, Lord, give me a Lamborghini. Right? Nope. For one, we know there's a little bit of hesitation when we ask for something like that because that's just a little uncalled for. Right? But if we need to be healed, if we need to have this fear leave us, this panic leave us, that's something he don't want you suffering with. Those are suffering. And who knows? You could be suffering if he did give you a Lamborghini because you'd go too fast and hit something. You just don't know. I mean, sometimes we're thinking, oh, yeah, but he's not a genie in a bottle. He is a God of the universe. I just said how he's going to wipe out all the elements. That's unfathomable, let alone the rest of this stuff, because all of this is made out of the elements, one way or the other. Now it makes more sense. If he can just say, I got this. Let me give you an illustration. If you haven't seen this before, this is an Apple Pencil. It goes with the iPad. It's really cool for people like me who like art and colorful things because I can keep my own notes right on the actual lesson that you're all looking at. Make my own lesson out of it, right? But the cool thing is if I accidentally tap this twice, you didn't see it just now here, it goes to erase mode. And so I might be thinking I'm highlighting something and I just wiped it all out. But that's what the Lord's going to do. Creation? What? It's going to be gone. That's amazing to think about. We're sitting here right now sending this crazy new satellite like a billion years that way in the sky, NASA is, to see farther out in this darkness and stars for what? By the time it gets there, the Lord will be back and he's going to see ya. I think I said it last time. We're always so interested in what's out there, but we don't go to the waters of the deep that we have right around us. That 70% of it's not even been explored yet. And it's right here. We don't want to go deeper all the time in God. We don't want to dig deeper. He always says, search for me and you'll find me. Dig a little deeper. He doesn't say stare into the heavens. Matter of fact, he don't want you doing that because like the Pharaohs, it'll get you off track. Don't go dreaming all the time of what could be better. Go searching for something. So the challenge of our day is not that God no longer speaks to us, but that we rarely actually listen when he does speak to us. We'll be in a situation where we won't like the answer we got. Okay. So you want to be this. All right. Well, I'm going to need you. Jameson, what time you get up in the morning? 5? So you got to be there pretty early. 4:30. So he gets up pretty early. Brother Dan, you know what that's like. So I'm just going to use you two guys as an example because you both are working. You get up super early. And I'm going to say, the Lord's now, hey, I want to use you guys. Good time the other night at men's conference. A little enlightening, right? A lot of enlightening. I want more, Lord. Okay, well, I'm going to need you to get up at 2:30. What? Right? Are you? Yeah, well, Jameson, you got to have time for me to talk to you. Right? Because once the day goes on, you're going to be exhausted at the end of the day. Or maybe something comes. I'm just sorry, Jameson. I'm not picking. I'm just saying. Right? Right? Or it could be something different for some of you people, Sister Shelley, Mom. You guys don't mind getting up early. I mean, because I get texts sometimes before I'm up. So I know you guys don't mind it. Now, I'm not picking on you, Sister Shelley. I get them from Mom, too. And that's okay, because I answer when I get up. But I'm just saying, it doesn't bother some people. It's not all about sleep, right? But maybe God wants you to do this or not to do that. You know? You're like, but I really want to. Like I've said before, my own job experience, I thought it was going to help take us to a different level. Lord says, no, you stay where you're at. I'm going to show that I will do this. You have no control over it, right? But this will, no. So was I willing to listen, or was I going to try to do it myself? Pharaoh elevated him to the second command. I already said this earlier. So Joseph immediately moved to suggest a plan to prepare for the coming crisis. Let God speak to you right now for the coming crisis we got coming. And follow Joseph's example. It's not going to be easy. The guy still worked. He wasn't like our government officials. He was out there tallying up how many bags of grain they were putting in the silo. He was out there. Egypt, hot, sticky, sweaty. He was still working the whole time, even past that. Now he's like, okay, good Lord, I got so many bags of grain, I can't even keep up no more. I ran out of chalk, I ran out of room on the board, whatever it was. He stopped even keeping track, right? He was able to suggest a plan that not only averted the national disaster, we've not been called on to avert national disasters, only on our own personal level. But also, even the prophesied or provided a path of prosperity for Egypt. As the rest of the narrative will bear out, Joseph's plan to succeed so well that Egypt not only had enough grain to eat, but also had enough to sell for probably a pretty tidy profit, no doubt, to other nations around them. So, Pastor, if you don't mind, you knew I would do this. That's why you said it from the pulpit. I'm glad you're in this part. You mentioned something last week that you knew a few of us would go and look up. You asked about healings and miracles and signs and wonders. And he just knows me. I often will call him about it. But I went and looked it up, Pastor. I dug into it, and it made me pretty excited to think about it because it's for all of us. It's for all of us. We know what healings are. Now, we can heal naturally. Takes time. God will, several times Jesus himself went up and healed persons right then. There's miracles that were a little bit different. They're not from healings, like being born blind and now you can see, or being a leper and now it's totally gone. That's a miracle. The difference was, I believe, in Pastor, is who is providing those. So how he correlated is the sign to the people around Jesus was the immediate healings. And the wonder was the fact that this guy can now see. So the thing is that he was using, not just that, remember, we're talking about Pharaoh and some 400 years later, the Lord spoke to Moses, and then Moses told Aaron, and Aaron performed it, so that it made it look like Moses was the wonder. Moses was providing the sign that Aaron acted out. The Lord does that through us here today still. Do you think right now that if the Lord set upon you and he really was impressing upon you and you went up and you knew somebody who had, bound to a wheelchair all their life, and you know their family is against going to church, and you went up and you said, the Lord, and this guy, whoever this person is, just like the 4 people that brought their friend, they had his faith, but so did the person, or else he would have said, just leave me home. So all 5 of them had faith. So you go up and you pray with that person, and they're praying, and not only do they rise to their feet for the first time, but then they start speaking in other tongues as the Spirit gives them utterance. What do you think is going to happen to all their people in that household when they see the wonder of this miracle in front of them? You have created this wonder through the fact that God has used you. We all know who work with any type of things in our lives that the proper tool makes your job a lot easier. So are we going to sit here, and I'm kind of running out, but are we going to be like Joseph, and are we going to spend our time wisely? I think I said this in our class last week. Time is the most valuable commodity we have. Once it's spent, it's gone. So will we spend our time for eternal purposes, or will we spend it wastefully for things on the other 5 sides of the block that don't matter? It's okay once in a while to do something fun, but if you're not spending time in prayer and fasting and reading your word and and having the Lord speak to you, the rest of it doesn't matter. You don't deserve any other rest, in all fairness. But the Lord is patient with us, just like he is with Joseph. He sat there, he made Joseph patient through all of this. And he had to make Moses patient through all of his sufferings too, and all his dealings. The guy was pretty much I guess you'd say a spoiled punk, if I can use that word one more time. Because he grew up in the king's house, one of his kids, right? His grandsons, technically. And so he was an adopted grandchild, but he was spoiled. That's why when he came out that day and saw the Hebrew being beaten, he thought he could just do what he was supposed to do. Whatever I want, let's kill the guy. Right? So then he gets thrown out in a desert prison. And a lot of times we might not be in a physical prison with bars, but we will have our own wilderness experience. Dry, just goes on for miles, never ceases to end. And the Lord is all the way providing a cloud over our head that's maybe only as big as our body, but you know what I'm saying? He just provides in ways that we forget about in the bad times. So, God's faithfulness did not eliminate difficulties, but rather helped Joseph to overcome them. Again, people that are in the other classes, I said that we're not going to go, he's not going to take us around the storm or over it or under it. We're going to have to go right through it. That's always easier on this side of it when it's sunny out. But later it's supposed to thunderstorm. And my dogs are going to be upset. But there's nothing we can do about it. We got to go through it. Right? We can prepare as best we can. And it says here in Genesis 50 and 20, it says, "But as for you, ye thought evil against me," talking to his brothers, "but God meant it for good." Grace did not keep Joseph out of the pit or the prison, but it did get him through those traumatic experiences. We're going to have traumatic experiences, and this grace will help us get through it. What happened? What helped him? The grace of God. His grace is sufficient. So as we round this part up, maybe you'll join with me, because I started writing this down. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Let's go in the next service with that spirit and watch